We're recording.
We are recording.
Good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock. We're calling this meeting of the Plainfield Select Board, Monday, April 14th, to order. Present here is myself, acting chair for the night, Francis Rose Subiando, Peter Youngbear, Patty Gemelli, Dan Fingers. Welcome. Thank you for coming, everyone. Changes to the agenda. We have a few changes to the agenda. Some is just about sequence, which maybe you all don't have to hear about. We're changing the order of the weekly reports, the bi-weekly reports. And then, yeah, I think that's what's being added. Yes. Okay. We have to return, excuse me. We are returning to the CDBG planning grant application for the village expansion. This is more of a technicality. We did not vote for it in the fullest language that was required. So we're gonna backtrack 2 weeks to vote for it again and approve it again with a document behind it of carefully worded language that was not presented last time. There we go.
This is the 60K planning.
60K planning grant. Announcements. Does anyone have any announcements?
Good job with this year. Road crew. Good job.
Yeah.
That's my announcement, is that you guys did an awesome job this year, and I feel like it was a winter, it was never gonna stop. Thank you so much.
Any other announcements? Okay. Public comment. All right.
Take it and run.
First up is town clerk's report.
Brad Tobin, town clerk. A couple of things to go over. I thought since it's on an agenda item, I could kind of expand on the municipal ticketing. If that's, people are okay to hear that, or so in municipal government, we have a challenge in terms of enforcing statutes, municipal statutes. So one of the recommendations from law enforcement would be to empower certain town officers with the ability to write municipal tickets. We've applied to the Judiciary Bureau. They issue each individual a number. The officers that I think would fit nicely for this would be the constable, the zoning administrator, the health officer, and the animal control officer. I'll get more into this, but essentially what the select board needs to do is empower each one of these officers to enforce specific statutes that the town has already passed. I want to get the numbers first before having you act on stuff. I want to get their ability to write the tickets in place before we present that. But I will, but I just wanted to give you the view from 50,000 feet of the process and how it works. Why do this? I think it'll give us more leverage. We've had a number of different situations where it would give us more standing in court to enforce people who willfully ignore our rules. On another front, just some housekeeping stuff. We upgraded the town office. We replaced the keys to the front part of the town office. And we also have changed the security lock on the vault, which hadn't been done for decades. We just felt these measures ensure the safety of the town office. Trying to think of trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's about it. I sent everyone the response from the state public safety commissioner regarding the incident that happened early in the summer. My personal feelings are this was a horrible whitewash of the events that I will speak about this more, but I'm incredibly disappointed that essentially the top state officer who is in charge of supervising the state police thought that the investigation was appropriate. It's really unfortunate. I think any reasonable person looking at the circumstances would say that when somebody commits grievous acts, they shouldn't walk away with $100 fine and their license suspended for 30 days. But I'll have more on that. Any questions or anything?
Dan has a question.
You both.
Peter's first, go ahead, Peter.
Regarding the municipal ticket, is there training required for anyone who is given these powers?
There isn't specific training per se, but I would turn to the sheriff's department. I've asked Brett to give an overview for everyone. There isn't specific training per se, but obviously that's in order in terms of just how to write out a ticket and so forth. So yeah, we will get some training before we have some people writing tickets.
Okay. My other question is, do you want my old key to get a new key?
Oh, no, actually, just an explanation on that. The old key still works for second floor and the back listers area. This just changed the keys to the front area rather than change all the keys in the whole setup.
So
So
we just need to get a new key.
yeah, you'll need to get a new key. Correct, I have them too.
Dan?
Well, I was just gonna say, the letter from the Public Safety Commissioner, so that you had sent a letter to the state prosecutor,
Correct,
and she had cited the poor investigation for the outcome. And this letter cites the prosecutor's unwillingness to push hard as the reason for the outcome. They're pointing their fingers at each other, basically.
correct. Not only are they pointing fingers at each other, but there doesn't seem to be any criticism of the investigation itself. This person from the state, who the letter is written to, supervises the state police.
Well, when the state prosecutor sent us a return letter, it said that they referred this investigation to the barracks and there was further training of the state trooper. That's what it says in the letter, right?
It made mention of that, but the state, as I recall, I don't think the state public safety commissioner mentioned it.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's like,
Yeah.
so we're just getting two different versions of.
Once again, I want everybody in this town to understand, we spent decades being terrorized by the likes of Hartley Breer, who gamed the system, and I really hoped that we turn a corner. But it seems pretty self-evident to me that the public safety department, the prosecutor and the state police point fingers at each other. Meanwhile, we have someone who committed, I think, generously, at least 1 or 2 felonies, walking away with $100 fine. And his license suspended for 30 days. May I note that he was not driving with a valid license or insurance when this incident happened. And if people think that's okay, well, I don't. And I think it's outrageous, and I hope that people take a good, hard look at the circumstances of this case and what happened. And, you know, it puts us in danger.
Mhm.
when you let people, you know, run roughshod. It's really upsetting. We have an employee who has a lifelong injury. Young family. Missed payments on his truck, which was repossessed because he couldn't work. And meanwhile, the person who perpetrated this gets away with not even a slap on the wrist, as far as I can see. And officials back the police investigation and the prosecution and so forth. I think it's disgraceful.
I agree with you, yeah.
Thank you, Bram. Y'all want to take a deep breath?
Was he under the influence as well?
We were
Was he under the influence as well?
not provable.
We're gonna get on to the road commissioners report with Josh Pitts.
So this is a good, that's a good lead up to what I'm about to talk about. A little bit lighter. The piece of equipment that was damaged in that accident, we'll be getting, insurance return of, approximately $51,000. And we're currently, moving some of the older equipment out, using the auction process that we contracted for. So those items have been posted. And what we're looking for now is to purchase a piece of equipment to fulfill the functions of the piece of equipment that was damaged in that accident. And the piece of equipment that Michael's selected would be an excavator. The cost of which is approximately $92,000. And with a trailer that would carry it, which would be a cost of approximately $25,000. Now, between the sale of current assets that we're holding, plus that insurance, plus the what is present in the equipment fund currently, we could make that purchase with what we have available to the highway department. So what I'd like is the approval to purchase those items. My understanding is that it's been at the town garage, so the crews had an opportunity to test it out. You know, like kick the tracks, I guess. And you know, you're pleased with it. I think the trailer has a pretty long lead time. And we did get multiple estimates. This was the best value, I think, that we could find. And one of the things where we're gonna be able to utilize this is, you know, in many of these projects that we have coming up, we'll be able to, we can use our own labor to apply to that in force account, you know, that we can get reimbursed through. But the backhoe that was damaged is actually not particularly useful when we're kind of looking at these bigger projects. And so being able to bring that in-house, having that piece of equipment, you know, in the fleet would allow us to do much more significant repairs to the road relative to what we currently have the capability to do in-house. And the amount of projects, you know, there is the work on Maxfield Road, the work on Cameron Road, potentially needing to create another exit for Cameron Road, one way or another. So all of these things, having this excavator would allow us to take those things on and perform some of the work much more quickly, then, what we would need to do to go through like a bid process. You know, and then in the event of some other further, calamity involving the roads, we would be able to respond much more quickly. To the situation, and then, you know, because of the abilities of an excavator versus what we hold currently. Michael, did you wanna say anything else about that, or?
I think you had it pretty good.
Okay, any questions?
You said, so the 51 from the insurance. And then, so the trailer together, they're 117 or something like that.
Yeah,
And how much is in our highway equipment fund?
so the equipment fund currently has 47,000, and then there is 21,000 that's owed to the equipment fund by the town. That was never placed there in fiscal year 2020. So there's a outstanding debt to the equipment fund that was never resolved. And then approximately the 40 40,000. It's kind of what we're hoping to get for the 2005 truck that's in good condition that we're selling. And then the other equipment that we have posted probably and or sold recently would come to approximately 10 to 12,000. So I think that all ends up right.
So those, when we sell the stuff at auction, the money that comes from that goes into the equipment fund.
Yes, we would apply that to the equipment, we would apply that to the purchase of the equipment, yes.
But when we auction off these things, does the money, all the money from that go into the equipment fund, or does it go to the highway budget, or does it go just to the town and we figure out what we do with it?
So those would be assets that are held by the highway department. And I think typically you want to keep your asset kind of value together. Sometimes you have to kind of move things. But in this case, we're selling assets to get new assets. So we don't necessarily have to put it into the fund per se, like, because we're just gonna need to take it out again, and I don't think we're gonna generate any interest by turning that around really quickly. Like, the only reason to put it in the fund would be to generate the interest income. But it is in the highway department's assets.
But I'm just trying to figure out, when this is over, all of the sales and buying things, it seems like based on the math, we would likely have approximately the same amount, the 47 we have in the equipment fund right now, something near there would be back in the equipment funds.
Yeah, any surplus from, the sales of this equipment, would return to the equipment fund.
Okay. And the 21,000 that's owed from 2023, that's just coming out of the general.
Yeah, the general fund never, in the general fund, that was never, that's the sale of that truck. Was never transferred into the correct fund. And so we've essentially, like, the general fund is essentially like erroneously not applied the asset back to what the town holds in reserve. And I think like that was an error that I'd like to correct, but it's not a given that we would need that. And in terms of timing, maybe the truck won't come in as much. So these are sort of the things that are in motion. The money that is moving is bigger than what we need, but things may not sell for as much, or we might have to wait for that check to come back. So we have to kind of move things around a bit, but ultimately, like, I think it's a good purchase.
Yeah, I just want to make sure the accounting, since we've had not the best accounting practices, that like money is, like, if that 21,000 is from general fund, that it makes a stop in the equipment fund and then goes, so that way it's shown and we don't just use it to pay for something and then it's like, well, where did that?
Yeah.
You know, I just want to make sure that like we're properly
We- we
accounting
will
for these
account for
funds.
that.
Okay.
Great. It was actually applied to the line, municipal building rental income, which is something that we didn't have at all in that entire fiscal year, the year before, the year after. So it was easy to find as an error. But it just kept kind of rolling through in the general fund. And then, like otherwise, for the, road report, we did,
Did you have a question on this, Peter?
I did. Yeah, just quick, you mentioned two things, the trailer, maybe there's a supply chain, and we may have to wait a while for that. Did I hear you right?
There's about an 8 to 10 week wait period.
Oh, 8 to 10 weeks, okay,
yeah, it's
that
just.
doesn't bother me.
it's not-
And this is a new excavator, not used,
Slightly used.
slightly used?
I believe it's like technically used, but it has very low hours.
What's its life expectancy?
Yeah.
I would say maybe 15 years.
Okay,
20
you.
years.
Thank you.
And also in the excavator price, that also includes a 5-year, 5,000 hour extended warranty with the machine, with that price,
So, still under the new car one.
right?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Right, I think that's all I have right now for,
We need a motion.
Well, do you need a motion is one question, and I also have something for you.
yes,
Do you need a motion?
I do. I
Okay,
think so. Yeah, go for it.
is there a motion at the table?
I would move that we approve the plan to use the insurance auction items and reserve fund monies to purchase the excavator and trailer.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion?
Just, sorry, you gave specifics in that motion that I did not get.
Sorry, the insurance money. This is the funding
Yep.
sources, the auction items and the reserve fund. Equipment reserve fund monies. To purchase the new excavator, slightly used excavator and trailer. Do we need to put a number up to a number or in this? You said 92 and 25. I mean, if we did
I
hundred
have
and
the
seventeen.
quotes, and I think I've submitted them to Carl, so like, I'm pretty sure that's accurate. I don't expect any other things to pop up.
Okay. I'm fine with that motion.
So Peter motioned, Patty seconded.
Yeah.
Any final discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes with 4 votes. Unanimous here tonight. What I wanted to bring up with the road crew department is again, the Mill Street Bridge safety concerns. There are 10 children between the ages of 3 and 5 or 6 that take that bridge with bikes, scooters, things with pedals, things without pedals. I've seen a couple kind of closer than I would like to see calls about like, there's danger there. There was last time I brought this up with preceded like a couple of months of snow cover. So like I acknowledge the difficulty there, and spring is here. The trips to the rec park are coming and want to come.
Mhm.
And if we spoke of, what was it, like snow fencing?
Snow fencing, yeah.
Snow fencing, lining both sides of that bridge with snow fencing would go a long way toward allaying like actual concerns for the safety of the village youth and anybody else who is walking across that bridge without a sidewalk, contending with fast moving traffic coming off the hill and coming through town. Do y'all need any support from us to like move on that?
I don't think so.
Thank you, much appreciated. All right, we have Karen Hatcher, grants report.
Good evening, everybody. Everyone. Good to see you. So this is the April report. First thing, just want to get a date on everyone's calendar. Monday, May 5th. We will be hosting a flood recovery community information update. So the grants group has made a lot of progress and we know that there are a lot of questions.
That's in the evening, that's
It's in
six,
the
that's
evening,
6
6 to 8 p.m.
6 p.m.
Yeah,
here,
here,
What
Yeah.
day of the week is that?
Monday.
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 So you won't have a select board meeting.
What?
We took it. You're welcome.
Unless we have to
Um,
call it that since we're all here.
Well, yeah, I was
Oh,
just gonna
that's
say,
right,
we,
Yeah,
we do have to figure out if more than two of us are going, then it might have to be an official select board meeting.
Yeah, we had a conversation with Carl about this, and it's not a meeting where any action will be taken, and I think you guys, if you don't sit near each other and don't talk to each other, you're probably okay, but it's up to you if you want to warn it.
Yeah, we'll just have to find out. I think if we're all in the room and we're all hearing the same information, then we would have to warn it since it is
Okay,
town
well, you can let
business.
us know, but,
Yeah.
we haven't, we, posted a calendar item on the Front Porch Forum, but not the agenda. Haven't done that or the Zoom link or any of that pending, meeting tomorrow where we're planning the meeting.
Mhm.
So, we'll
Yeah.
coordinate with you guys.
Yeah, I think you can do what you were gonna do. If we have to warn it, if we think there's gonna be a majority of select board members, we can just warn it on top of the work that you're doing. So don't wait for us.
Sounds good.
We promise not to hijack the meeting.
let's see here.
It's okay. It's fine. Great. So just some updates. We've had a lot of progress. The week of March 31st, the FEMA site inspectors were here. It was a full week. We were, a full team out in the field. I was not, but lots of people were. And, just really want to give, props to Gary Smith and Josh and Michael Bingham and our team from the Integrity Group, who came up from Florida to work with the FEMA inspectors. It was a lot of work. We did more than 30 site visits. And as you recall, it's not Brook Road for FEMA, it's all of the area outside of Brook Road. So it's Cameron and Lee and Gore and Maxfield and Recreation Field Road and some other roads as well that have damage, as well as water, wastewater lines, and areas outside of Brook. So that work happened despite a really snowy, nasty day on Thursday, which we took as an office day and got caught up on paperwork. But all of that's moving along. And, you know, we think that the number there, permanent projects, will come in somewhere between $5 and $10 million by the time all the estimates are done. It's pretty significant. And so, you know, Josh was mentioning having our own equipment and our own labor to do some of that work. That means, you know, that we get paid for that, right? That's, so that's money to the town. We're also, in the course of, the work with FEMA right now in getting the final estimates for emergency repair reimbursement. Those, numbers are being worked on by our consultants right now. That FEMA application is extremely complicated and we've been experiencing a fair amount of pressure from FEMA because the local office we heard is closing in July. So we're trying to work as quickly as we can, but also we don't want to submit an incomplete application and we want it to be correct. So we're really grateful to have the support of the Integrity Group on this project because they do know all of what has to be done. And I'm really grateful we're not doing it ourselves because it would be a lot. Okay, Federal Highway. I think I mentioned last time that we were talking with the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission about offering some labor and support to the process. And so Keith Cubbin has been working with Josh on the detailed damage inspection reports. And I think we mentioned that, I think last time we spoke about it was 12 individual projects along Brook Road. That I think is now 11, right, Josh? Because something got combined, or are we back to 12?
The first one is actually on Mill Street.
Well, we know that, yeah, but that's
And
part
then
of the
there's
connector.
11 on-
So 11 on Brook Road, and Mill Street Bridges also. So top to bottom, bottom to top, right? It's bottom to top, 1 through 12, from Mill Street up,
Mill Street's 1, and then number 12 is on the border.
on the border of Orange, yeah. So emergency, so what that work does is it generates basically reports and invoices to the Federal Highway Administration for emergency repair reimbursement. And that number comes in at over $800,000. So that's money we have already spent that will be coming back to the town. And we understand that that money will come back faster than the FEMA money, which we're grateful for.
Yeah.
So, but we do think that's probably 3 months, Josh, 3 to 6 months by the time they do their processing. Yeah,
And is that coming out of the $1 million bond that
that
we-
did come out of, right?
We've already paid,
It's paid.
we've already paid out. I'll be getting to it.
He's gonna, I'm
Okay.
the setup and he's gonna give you the detail, so.
Okay.
I give you the bigger picture, he's gonna tell you the detail on that, okay, but because we have real numbers to talk about now, like we didn't before, okay. So Mill Street Bridge is the first project, we did report on that, and then VCB is the engineering firm, is that right? Is it VCB?
VHB is.
VHB, I'm sorry,
VHB.
there are way too many acronyms,
Mhm.
VHB,
I
thank you.
agree.
So more on that. So that's that. The study of the Great Brook, the grant for that, was going to be an advanced system grant, but that is changed. It's better for us actually because it speeds the timing up. As it was, if we went for this grant, it was gonna be a much longer timeline and it wouldn't line up with the information that we need for making good decisions on Brook Road about repair, rebuild, moving, whatever. So the state, actually, state of Vermont and Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission are now putting that grant together. It's also off our plates. And it's a 3-town grant now, so it's Mary. I think it's Marshfield. Jesus. sorry.
Habit. Habit.
It's Marshfield, Plainfield, Orange, I think it's Orange. And it's a regional grant now, so it's not ours to do, but we will benefit by it. Okay,
Does that mean you're getting more help with it?
it means
Together?
we're not having to write it, it's being done
Oh, good.
for
good.
us and for the other towns.
And what's BRIC stand for?
It it's one, I don't know. I'll be clear, I don't know, but that's the new, and the funds were found in, it's part of what Vermont Emergency Management manages, the funds. And the BRIC funds were leftover funds from 2022. So they found these funds and decided to apply them in this way. We didn't. Every month, we have what we call Funders Roundtable with a host of funders at the state and federal level and other partners. We have one tomorrow morning. And at the last meeting, we discussed the challenge we were having trying to line up the work that was going to need to be done on Brook Road and the study. It wasn't lining up. And so following that meeting, the folks at the state met and found a way to speed it up. So that's one of the really beautiful things that happens as a result of these kinds of meetings that we're having.
I just found it.
So
Thank
did, so did
FEMA, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities.
Thank you, Peter.
But it's a FEMA grant.
Yeah, thank you. I always appreciate when other people know things. Okay. Other things, still on hold with the Emergency Watershed Protection Grant, that's still under moratorium. The Batchelder Dam Study Grant is being coordinated through the Friends of the Winooski, and that's going to be submitted by the end of this month, and there'll be some documents that Carl needs to sign before then. CDBG-DR, which is the big one, still waiting on information. We thought we would have that at the beginning of April. We still have not heard. And we haven't heard on what the criteria will be, and we haven't heard if Plainfield is eligible. So both those questions are still unanswered. And we'll keep you informed as we get more information. Okay. I'm just gonna go through this finish and then we'll go to the action that we need, okay?
Mhm.
Great, thank you. So we're still waiting to hear on the animating infrastructure grant for, the planning grant to do the art at the site of the art installation at the site of the Heartbreak. And that was a pitch, so if we get selected, we'll make a full application to the Arts Council on that. We are also pursuing an arts, what's that called, arts? Sorry. Calling it arts facilities, but basically it's a grant to replace the lift or to repair, to put a new lift in here at the Opera House. I'm working on with Keith and with the new committee that was formed on accessibility. So those came on. So I think that's mostly it. The action we need tonight has to do with the $60,000 grant for planning for the East Village expansion engineering, ECDP. There is a resolution that is part of that grant that needs to be adopted by the board officially. And then the resolution needs to be signed by the town clerk. And then that can be uploaded into the portal tomorrow. So last meeting, the board approved the grant, but we need this resolution. We didn't have it with us. We apologize. So if we could have that action tonight, I'll take that to Brandon to sign, and then we'll put it in the portal tomorrow. Okay, I think that's full report, and open to any questions.
You also open to gratitude. Thank you.
Oh, also open to gratitude for sure. Yes, I am. Thank you.
You've been amazing for our
Okay,
town.
great.
I had a question on the, as I recall from the information I've seen on that grant, it's a June decision timetable on that? Is that correct?
I think that's right, Peter. Yeah,
Do you see some?
Yeah,
opening
we
things,
did.
guys?
Yes.
Christy Farnham, who works for the state, said that the GBDR grant, the big one,
Yeah.
details will be in by the end of the month, I believe is what she said. Those
She said
details will
the
be
end-
released by the end of the month.
End of the month now. Okay,
That's what
we've been
we're
checking.
hearing. So
That's the latest.
that's not that far away.
That's
The end of the month
okay.
is not that far away.
That's a good idea.
That's great. Any other questions?
I think Dan has offered to read the resolution.
Yeah, I'll read this resolution and also motion that we approve it and allow the town clerk to sign it. Whereas the town of Plainfield is in applying for a grant under the Vermont Community Development Program, Community Development Block Grant Planning Grant. And whereas it is necessary that an application be made and agreements be entered into with the state of Vermont. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. The applicant, which is us, possesses the legal authority as defined by the state act to apply for the grant and to administer the program. The applicant apply for a grant under the terms and conditions of said program and hereby agree hereby to enter into certifications and assurances thereof. The application is duly adopted in current municipal plan 412. Excuse me. The applicant has a duly adopted and current municipal plan, which we adopted on April 12th, 2021. And that the project is consistent with said plan. The applicant has received documentation from the Regional Planning Commission that the project is consistent with the regional plan. That Arian Tabumari is hereby authorized to be contact person as such to provide on behalf of applicant all documents and information necessary for completion of said application and to provide such coordination as may be necessary for said applications. And that Dan Fingus, select board member, who is hereby designated to serve as the municipal authorizing official for the grants management online system, which IntelliGrants, which just means I get to do the really stupid computer system that doesn't work very well. That is understood that if the application is funded, the receipt of CDBG funds as federal funds pass through the state of Vermont may require that an audit of the applicant be conducted under the provisions of the Single Audit Act as amended, and that CDBG funds may be used to fund only a limited portion of the audit cost. And we would pass this on the 14th day of April, 2025. And then Bram is here watching us do this and he can then sign the document. So I make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second, oh,
Any discussion? I think it's funny that the shady dig at the computer system is part of now the resolution.
That's right. Well, it's not, not official, not official.
Doesn't-
Right at the bottom.
doesn't really- Graham?
In light of that,
Wait, but don't start signing until we vote.
all those in favor, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye,
Four unanimous.
there we go.
Okay, Graham.
Thank you.
I don't think that kind of looks Graham. There you go. Right out,
Mr.
right
Treasurer, it is
Sorry about that.
time for your report.
What signature?
I said, your name?
Maybe give them 30 seconds to.
Okay, sorry. The date and everything.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, thank you.
So I passed out a bit of a, kind of a rough estimate of like our, the kind of the expectation of when funds will be coming back and when, and kind of like the, where they're coming from. So if you start in the upper left, you have 2023 cash received from Federal Highway and FEMA in relation to the 2023 flood. So those amounts total to $240,781.24. Now, this is the compensation we've received back from FEMA and Federal Highway for that event. And so we've received those in this fiscal year. And then we have the 2024 flood. And so I believe that we'll receive probably, some of these will probably come in this fiscal year and some we will receive in the upcoming fiscal year. And so the first round that was submitted, I would expect that we'd be getting back approximately those first 5 submissions, which total to $638,478.82. Now in the fiscal year 25, which we're in, the FEMA 24 category A and category B, which is the kind of the cleanup and response to the emergency repairs. That's an estimated number. We don't have like the full number just yet. But I think that is quite accurate. It'll probably be slightly more because this doesn't include the force account labor for those locations. So, but this is what we've paid out in invoices that were not associated with the submissions to the Federal Highway. And then during the process of trying to get our cash flow and we've used some of our funds from the revolving loan and ARPA to help bridge some of that. And so we will be paying those back with the funds that we receive out of the first submissions. And then all of the return on these items from Federal Highway 24 and even 24, 50% of those payouts we're obligated to use to pay back the bond bank.
Mhm.
So, and the bond bank being at borrowing of $1 million, we will have like the net funds coming back to cover that 50% without any issue. And pay back some of these obligations which we've used, these internal funds that we've used, and we can return those back to their state prior to the flood. And then the rest of the Federal Highway from that I would expect for the emergency phase coming next fiscal year would be about $227,249.43. Now, at the bottom in the black box, you have the total FEMA cost estimate. So this is kind of what FEMA has estimated the cost could be based on the damage inventory. Now, this is not the actual, like, this would be the cost to rebuild all of those locations that are not Federal Highway this is not like a particularly hard number because we don't know the actual, what we're going to actually spend. But like Karen said, it would be between $5 and $10 million, and I think I think it's probably gonna be a little closer to the 10. But, you know, I believe our share for that is 7.25%.
7.5.
7.5. So, so being able to reduce the cost through purchase of the excavator, you can see is gonna help reduce our overall expenditures we need to rebuild these locations. So that's something to consider there. The federal highway project cost estimates, we're not quite there yet with that process. The difference between the federal highway process in terms of estimating and the project cost is FEMA is very like front heavy with their estimates. And so they do a lot of the work up front to kind of cost things out, and this is why the site inspections are so arduous. With the federal highway process, because it's broken up by specific location, we'll have a better idea, probably in a few weeks, what the cost for the permanent projects would be. And I believe that, there's only 3 locations would not involve a permanent project. The reason I'm a little bit fuzzy on that is because I'm having a little bit of back and forth with Ross Gown from Municipal Assistance, like whether or not the damage to the Bridge 22, which is on Brook Road at the bottom of Cameron Road, would qualify. You see that Dawn is on the call. Thanks, Dawn, for the photos. I think they're going to be hugely impactful to us getting that approved as a permanent, hopefully. And then we don't have the CDBG-DR here, and so this will be kind of the document that I'm going to use to, as we get more information, track our expected income back to the town of what we've expended, and then we'll build this out as we go. I was hoping to have work back from Bonnie Batchelder around to give you a complete treasurer's report. That work got a little bit delayed because we're having some difficulties getting Batchelder Associates approved with our statements on the bank. So hopefully I'll have that for you at the next regular select board meeting. And then there are some things that have come back in terms of revenues. We got back a grant cleared just I believe this morning. That was a highway grant for reimbursement for $10,000 that was associated with work that was done on catch basins. And so that just goes into the general fund we paid out, so that is just part of our upcoming cash on hand. Any questions about the flood revenues, expenditures?
So the number, I don't know if you purposely didn't give the total FEMA cost estimate, the 9 million, basically $9 million number. Did you say we are on the hook for 7.5%?
If we, so like in the projects, so the projects are not defined, right? Like when they're estimating, they're taking, they're kind of like going. You want to take this?
Yeah, I just wanna, yeah. There's something called ERAP at the end, at the very end of FEMA, when they close out. So there are a number of offsets that happen on that 7.5%, including all of the volunteer hours that were put in, which we entered into FEMA this week. And that looks like it's $220,000 worth of value. So there are a number of things that are gonna offset the 7.5 at closeout. And we don't know all of that yet, so I think, and it's not something we have to come up with as the projects are happening, but rather at the very, very end of the FEMA process.
And this is just for FEMA.
This is just for FEMA.
And so if the
Yeah.
slightly over $9 million is what it ends up costing, we have to hopefully show in kind for about $680,000.
Roughly, but
Roughly.
in kind and lots of other pieces there that,
Got
yeah.
I rounded. I used 10 million and 7.
it.
10,700,000.
I rounded to the closer million number.
But it won't be cash out. It
Got
won't be
it.
like we have to come up with the cash. It'll be a lot of other ways that we're offsetting that. And we have, you know, we had a lot of emergency pieces, like setting up the emergency shelter, for example. There's a whole bunch of offset right there. So there are a lot of pieces we're learning about with our consultants that are gonna come into play with this. So I wouldn't at this point. And the thing about the FEMA app is like we're years away from closeout. So this isn't something we have to worry about in this calendar year, in this fiscal year, and the next one. It's because this is gonna go on for a while, so.
Well, I'm glad to hear that the painstaking detail we did for the volunteer hours, mostly Mary, Teresa and Maureen Lynch did to make sure that we had all those documents. I'm
100%,
glad it happened.
Nice,
100%,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. To have that.
One question I realized I had perhaps more for you, Karen, than Josh, but the closure of the local FEMA office, is that because of national shenanigans or is that something else?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
That's enough.
Thank you for asking that. I wanted to ask that too.
I haven't heard about any shenanigans with federal land interest.
yeah, federal highway, so far.
I can tell you what they did to the IRS.
Not on the agenda.
No.
Any other questions about the process for funds with the emergency work?
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, moving on, we have the, I guess, first regular EVIAC report, East Village Expansion Advisory Committee.
Right.
Thank you.
So Jared Birchmore here,
And Liz Walt.
and we just wanted to introduce ourselves to the board as the liaisons for the East Village Expansion Advisory Committee to the Select Board. We'll be kind of alternating who attends and provides updates to you all. And also letting you know ahead of time if we don't have any significant updates so that you guys can remove this from the agenda. We've held our first 2 meetings, the last 2 Thursdays. And we have 2 upcoming meetings in April, also on Thursdays, starting at 5 p.m. here in the Opera House, and then also via Zoom. Just in terms of process, our meeting minutes, we are approving at the next meeting, so those will be uploaded to the town website after the following Thursday meetings. As well as the videos for those meetings are actually able to get uploaded to the town website quicker. And in terms of major highlights, we have spent the last 2 meetings creating group expectations in our process. The last meeting, we talked about forming work groups and divvying those up amongst ourselves. We'll be reaching out to other individuals who weren't appointed to the committee that are interested in potentially working on those work groups to get involved. And we also had Karen present at the last meeting, just kind of a general overview of the grants that they're working through and how that might come into play for our committee. And yeah.
Me too.
So,
Very
yeah.
Can you just name the 4 work groups in case people watching are interested in those areas? I did send an email today to the 21 people that didn't get appointed, that had applied, letting them know about the work groups and how they can get involved with those.
Thank you.
Yes, so the work groups that we're starting with are communications, construction, which deals with cost, schedule, permitting, budget and financing in terms of revenue and grants. And then also the last work group around land lottery, lot sales, buyer education, and housing development. And again, those are kind of initial work groups
The,
and
the last 2 subheadings for the land lottery, lot sales, what?
buyer education and housing development.
Education, housing development. Talking about housing development, what does that mean in this context?
So I believe, at least at the initial stage, that's just talking about being able to research different components of what potential buyers might be able to use as, you know, their own foundation for moving forward after lot sales.
So I get pathways to housing,
Yeah,
pathways to physical accommodation. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
yeah, and anyone is welcome to show up to the meetings, also to reach out to any of us on the committee if you have questions or comments. Danny Osman, Lauren Geiger, and Aaron Tabumari are the 3 co-chairs. Yeah, if there's any other questions on the board.
The rollout of more working groups, is that like week by week? Is that what we're to be expecting, or?
So yeah, so the work groups, they will be meeting outside of the, you know, the scheduled, committee meetings. And providing regular updates to the full committee, and also those updates will be provided here as well.
Rose, are you asking if there were more, because there were more work groups suggested in our.
I know there's
the
more work
guidance.
groups possible,
Yes,
Yes,
and so I guess, yeah, I
yes,
guess the
so yes,
rollout on
that's
those.
coming as needed, but right now we feel we prioritized.
Great,
And,
yeah.
and working from there, but yes, there will be more to come.
Cool.
And as certain things wrap up or certain things are needed, then we'll discuss forming another work group.
Yeah, and I guess toward Dan's point about reached out to those who were not selected for the committee. You know, that was reached out with Dan's words. I guess I'm wondering, is there?
It's actually the committee's words. They
Okay,
had asked me if I would reach out to them, and I asked them to send me what they wanted.
great.
And so Lauren Geiger, one of the co-chairs, gave what they wanted, and it includes that in the future, there will be a work group that will address design and management plans for common and community spaces, but they're gonna wait until plans are more firmed up before they do that.
Cool. That's great.
Question about, I know that there are RFPs out at the moment for engineering. What is the date that those are due back, you know?
Off the top of my head,
We may have it in an email
I-
from Sandy.
Well, because we talked about it, so we're having the special meeting next Monday. I believe they're due either today or tomorrow, and then she would be getting them to us. Originally, it was gonna be due at like 10 a.m. this morning, and then we were gonna get them for this meeting.
Right,
But we
I
delayed it.
remember that, yeah.
Yeah, so it should be very soon.
Soon, okay. And are those, then, would that be something that like your construction and permitting group would look at
yes.
first before bringing it to your whole group? Okay.
Yes, I believe so.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, this is a need for a transparent moment. The agenda that was printed was not the most recent agenda. So it's missing a line that was on the agenda, which was an invitation to the select board from Will Colgan to speak to the town's commitment to sidewalks.
The Hogan's here.
Will Colgan,
Yeah, I'm here. I can speak to that. the town is applying for a neighborhood development area. And which will expedite and help housing development in the town, among other things. And one of the requirements of to get the designation is to have a policy on sidewalk connectivity. And I asked Alice Merrill, who ran a lot of the earlier sidewalk work, and Carl about any current policy on how the town wants to move forward with more sidewalks. And just a brief history, the sidewalks you see in town are a result of a long-term planning and grant and execution around Main Street and Mill Street, and also the up on Route 2, but it came to a sort of a halt around the Brook Road Bridge, which was going to be rebuilt. And then that not only got rebuilt, but it needs to be rebuilt and redesigned and all kinds of extra work. So I wasn't sure where the town stood on its expansion policy for sidewalks. And if there isn't one, I sent the select board a suggestion, a model sample of what Morrisville has as a policy for sidewalk expansion. And it might be good to update that to have a statement about connecting the sidewalks to the Goddard campus, which was part of the original program, but really wasn't a substantial enough design. And also the East Village expansion, that we want to have pedestrian connectivity to those new areas in town, which are also part of the neighborhood development area. So I wasn't sure what existed in town. I asked around, I didn't get a lot. So maybe the select board may want to either consider a resolution, but would be one thing, but a policy statement on sidewalk expansion, if there isn't one, is something you could consider.
Heard, thank you, Will. Yeah, in terms of what's existing, what's already policy, or I guess actions on this from the select board in town government. There is the fact that we have established now a reserve fund for sidewalks. That just happened. That is, yeah, so that we have money in the bank to support sidewalk building. I think the creation of the accessibility committee is like another piece that is like shows any town resolve toward making this place more accessible. As the parent of a 4-year-old, yeah, I want more sidewalks.
Yeah.
I want my child in the street less.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think there was anything about not having sidewalks. It's just a question of what's the formal piece of data that I can submit for the application. And unfortunately, I didn't hear back specifically what that could be. And I could probably piece together what the town currently has. But the select board could maybe do a resolution or saying that it wants, in light of the Goddard campus being privately developed and the East Village expansion project underway, we wanted to incorporate those into the sidewalk projects.
Peter?
I'm not aware that there's a sidewalk policy, and I did look at what you sent from Morrisville, which looked like overkill for us. It was more like if there's a developer who comes in town, the developer's responsible for building the sidewalk. You know, that type of thing. That what does the town plan say? I mean, if there's a document about a policy, shouldn't that be in the town plan?
It is, and we submitted that, but it wasn't quite enough. What they would really like to see is a capital budget, but we do have that town meeting article that was passed that I can submit. And basically we can ask to see what they really need to see in, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up, you know, Josh used the term asset management when we were talking about the 5 reserve funds that were created at town meeting. Because we don't have a capital budget, if you will. So these reserve funds are a step towards a capital budget. So maybe those are sweet words for the people reading your language at the other end. That we are moving in that direction, and here's proof of it.
Yeah, I think so. I think that might be enough.
Dan?
Will, when is this due? Like, when is the grant due?
Well, we gotta put the next, they may have a special, it gets submitted to a special advisory board and they may do a special meeting in June. So we're not like under a lot of pressure, but it'd be
So
nice.
What
to-
I'm seeing on this Morristown document that you sent us as an example is that the planning council, planning commission created something and then the select board approved it and actually they revised it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I wonder if you all at the planning commission could use this as a basis and create something that we could then approve at a future meeting.
Okay, yeah, I'll look into that. Like I say, I'd like some clarity from the department about what specifically we need, because it's no sense chasing down something that won't meet the requirement. So I should have that this week. And I think we have enough pieces, and I know there's enough desire in town to get it done. I don't think we have an issue there.
We have another comment, Will, from Josh Pitts.
So, Will, there's been, quite a bit of study about sidewalks in the past. I believe there was a scoping study, by Dufresne and, the Dufresne group. So-
Yes, I've got a copy of that.
Yeah, and there is some more, kind of historical, like, work on, that the town has done in the past in the interest of, sidewalks. You know, and we've invested in, more infrastructure to maintain the sidewalks this year. Including purchasing a tractor and a
Sidewalk plow.
sidewalk sander, and so if any of that is helpful, let me know. I can pass some of that along to you.
Yeah, I've got that information, and the agency is really looking at stuff, at future plans versus past plans. So they know we've done a lot of work. They just want to see something that we're committed to keep doing it. And I think maybe that article at town meeting day and the reserve funds and the asset management, it will be enough. But I'll find out more information.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it would be my delight to pass a resolution that says we want sidewalks everywhere. And I think that might feel a little hollow.
Yeah.
And that I think something with a little more traction, teeth about it would be, as Dan suggested, like coming up with a Plainfield appropriate policy that we may approve and would be happy to.
Yes, I think so. And I'll do some more research, and I'll add that the neighborhood development area is really crafted around bigger towns. They're not used to dealing with a town the size of Plainfield, and it's a newer program. So they want to see things that we're not going to see in Plainfield, in terms of, you know, green spaces and streetlights and, you know, a whole lot of infrastructure that doesn't quite fit in our village.
Understood. Did you still have a comment, Peter? No. Okay, thank you, Will.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. This segues beautifully into our next topic, which is to discuss the offer of a facilitated community conversation with the Vermont Council on Rural Development. To offer any preface here, I see Laura Cavan Bailey is here with us from VCRD. VCRD came before the board, I think in the fall, after the flood, to offer their services to host community conversations toward kind of imagining any kind of design specificity around this town's future. At that time, we kind of weren't ready to engage with them. And then flash forward a few weeks back, I brought up the possibility of a Plainfield Housing Committee in addition to the Village Expansion Committee, to look at all the many possibilities that people are brainstorming. There are many possibilities for housing opportunities here in Plainfield to bring more housing online, of all kinds, that are simply different projects from the village expansion, and they have their hands full. And so I had proposed, how about a housing committee to look at all the many other options, to apply the same kind of rigor that the village expansion committee have been about that idea. And there was a lot of enthusiasm about the concept, but no one actually stepped forward to person that even imagined committee. And so we all remembered, oh, VCRD offered to host this community conversation in which we might imagine housing possibilities for this town going forward. We think there's wide agreement that this place needs more housing, the state at large, Plainfield, absolutely. And then we had also introduced the question of community spaces. I don't know, is it appropriate, Laura, that I share about this, or do you want to speak?
Yeah, no, I think the context that you're providing is great, and I can give some additional
Great.
context after you sort of wrap up where things are now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Community spaces are another something that are bubbling in the imaginations of the town right now. There's the wonder, of course, of what happens with the old co-op space, the Grange, and the community space above. Right now on the site plan of the village expansion project, there is a community space that is, vaguely programmed right now. Meanwhile, I have some words here from Jay of the Grace United Methodist Church, which is also looking at its future with glasses on about what it might look like. So I'm going to read these words from Jay. Grace United Methodist Church has been a presence in Plainfield since 1801, and the existing building became the hub of Plainfield Village when it was built in 1852, with the old church building becoming the town's current municipal offices. We believe that the church building serves as a visual symbol of Plainfield's history. During last year's flood, the Grace building and property became a hub of services to our neighbors seeking assistance. Grace also hosts the summer farmers market, the bi-weekly community meal, and the community's only 12-step recovery group. We also served as the central location for last year's Old Home Days. As the congregation has struggled both in participation and financially, we recognize that the church must better connect with community needs. Thus, we are open for discussions with community leaders about how our property can best serve the community. Wrapping up this, we're talking about 3 community spaces, potentially, in a third of a mile strip in this town. And so in my thinking, that wants thoughtful coordination, just enough redundancy to be resilient and not so much that it saps its own vitality from the system. So these are this is the context pieces that kind of brings us to Laura and the potential role of VCRD to help Plainfield with these, imagine its own future, really.
Well, yeah, if I may just add a little bit, and I apologize for not being in person today, but you don't want my body coming from a house full of respiratory and stomach bugs. So I appreciate the space to come by Zoom. But yeah, to sort of set the stage for this conversation here for the next little bit of time together, VCRD, the Vermont Council on Rural Development, provides capacity to small towns, but we're working with and for rural towns. So we're not coming in with any set process or agenda. It's really wants to be pulled from the community-driven process of what the town needs. One of the things that in the programs that I help facilitate, it's called Resilient Communities, and it's an adaptable service. So we really are able to craft what could a forum on housing look like for Plainfield? What are the needs? Bringing people together who are already involved within that process, and then co-creating what that looks like together with those grassroots efforts that are well underway. And there's so much happening within Plainfield. And so it's sort of seeing and asking you all if there are processes or spaces that would be beneficial to the conversation that would be helpful to have VCRD help facilitate and convene folks into that space. And also really like timing. What does that look like? Are there enough questions out there that feel resolved to kind of, are you ready for that type of conversation? Or is it waiting to see how some of the existing pieces are bubbling and emerging, say Goddard College and the new Village Expansion Advisory Committee, kind of as that work gets underway, are there pieces and processes that would be more beneficial to maybe starting a full community conversation later in the year, but really wanted to bring it back to the Plainfield Select Board around timing. We never really know exactly what's in store ahead, but as we look at capacity for VCRD, there's a little bit of time, end of July, and then really the fall has a lot of space to create either a multi-step process or a space for conversation around one topic such as housing or community spaces. So that was sort of one big question, is sort of on timing. And the second question for you all to consider is really bringing folks together, sharing conversation around what could be done or what wants to be done. It feels like there's also the prioritization and action planning piece of it that would be highly beneficial versus collecting all the ideas. There are a lot of ideas, it seems like, already out there and already in play. And so the question is it a multi-step process of bringing people together to get to more of a prioritization that the collective community stands behind and moves forward together.
You have a comment, Peter? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think back to a couple of comments. A number of people have written to me, and I'm sure to other members of the select board, about, you know, other housing opportunities other than the East Village expansion. And we now have this new committee, they're going full bore, et cetera. But at a recent meeting, I think it was Michael Birnbaum stood up here and said, what happens if that doesn't happen? You know, are we just going to sit by and wait? And this goes to your timing question. Are we just going to sit by and wait and see? And then if it doesn't, then try and start up something new, when there are people who have said, you know, like our Plainfield Area Community Trust, what's happening with the Plainfield Inn? Can we turn that into apartments? What's happening with, you know, infill spaces in the current village? What's happening with, you know, derelict homes that aren't being taken care of by the landlords when they could be made into housing? What's happening with Goddard College? There are some parcels of land that the town owns that could be developed, that have been identified, you know, and it would seem to me that the timing, you know, I think we'd be foolish not to be looking at those at the same time that we're doing that. And so I think, you know, when we were kicking around, what's the possibility for VCRD here, is, can you guys facilitate pulling those pieces together? I think it would not take too long to get the ideas on the table, and you would move fairly quickly to a prioritization or investigation and then prioritization process with that.
Yeah, and you point out that there are these different entities that are grappling with the piece, and sort of a follow-up question to that is housing, right, is this huge topic in the state and in your community. There will be links, I think, to other pieces, right, to the infrastructure, to the green space and the buyouts. What does that start to look like? And so just sort of a question of how many bounds you want to keep within the conversation versus a larger community visioning process. I do want to share an example from Johnson, where we worked this fall. The community and economic development director saw that the community was very divided and really not having not coming together collectively. And I would not say that's the same thing in Plainfield happening, but in Johnson, people who were really involved were getting burnt out and kind of stepping aside, and very, very divided community. And he asked VCRD to think about how to bring the community together in a long-term recovery plan process to get the voices heard. And when we start and are asked to work within the community, we try to talk to different folks in different sectors and get a pulse of, is this a right time for the community to come together around broader topics or specific topics? And we kept hearing from different avenues of like, yes, we do need to come together to hold this space and hold this conversation. And yet there was still skepticism of the process, being like, well, no one's going to show up. We're not going to actually get anywhere, get any further than we are currently. But through the support of this sort of planning group that is folks from that community, they did their outreach and with VCRD's support of sort of that engagement and outreach process, and getting people to show up to these full community conversations that had much broader lenses to it. People were really surprised at who came out and who has not been a part of the conversations, that was able to be there and to share their voice in the process. And that was with a much broader topic base of resilience in general across the community. And what that did is it spurred ideas and connections and priorities. And there are some fantastic, unfortunately, still leaning on like volunteer-led efforts, but that energy that develops within the community to progress the ideas moving forward. And one example is Access to Food group that has been standing up different efforts and starting a community meal, looking into farmers markets, and starting a general store, supporting a general store coming into town. And so there's been a lot of energy that was created by creating that space for the collective larger conversation. So just wanting to put that out there, in that even communities that felt like it was divided and folks weren't going to come to the table, it did provide that platform and a space to hold that larger conversation of what does the community need in general. And I think with housing, a lot of those other threads are going to come through in the conversation around infrastructure, around communication, around affordability and basic needs, infrastructure like that within the community center, or laundromat, some of the pieces that have come up. And so just kind of prepping that the conversation around housing may feel like it has some bounds, but there are likely other threads that are going to emerge through that process, and would want to be able to hold space for those ideas and those themes to also kind of emerge and bubble up and be a part of the process and the prioritization that may come from it. So just giving in context, like that was in Johnson, it was a 4-month process. Maybe Plainfield wants to start with a smaller, more bound conversation, but you may also miss some of the threads and opportunities that are happening in town and or could be connected together by keeping it a little bit smaller. And that's really a conversation as to what you all feel is the need for the community conversations right now, being much more immersed in it than I am, and knowing and feeling where that benefit could support the community in identifying other opportunities, like you said, for housing or for other projects.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. I think some members of the board and members of the audience here have comments.
Laura, one brief question. Have you read RAMP, the study that was done here in Plainfield and Marshfield that VCRD facilitated a couple of years ago?
Yes, and I was not with VCRD at that time, but we have read through it, and it's an interesting example of oh, go ahead.
You talk about all these sort of bigger picture things as context for something more focused like housing. So we've done that here. And when VCRD came last fall, I guess, and kind of presented itself as a resource, I think there was a lot of feedback from the community that we've done this, we've now been traumatized by these floods. We're not interested in a philosophical thought process. We want tangible things, focused things. And that was repeated by a number of people who testified. And I would say I'm in that group. My specific question to you is VCRD willing to facilitate a housing focused group for us? And
I think we are open to, providing that facilitated service for Plainfield. I think it would be in conversation with groups and entities that are already working in that way within your community, being key partners and providing key input to what that process would look like and what the outcomes could be.
I see Karen Hatcher at the mic.
Karen Hatcher, just a couple of thoughts to share. You know, Laura mentioned long-term recovery. And I think, you know, I also am aware of the comments that folks made about the ramp study and all that work that was done, and then how nothing came of it, how it was kind of, you know, all that good work and then no action. And I think, you know, there are a couple of pieces to this to consider. One is, we're not living in the same world pre-flood, right? We have a much different set of circumstances to consider as a town, and different expenses and different priorities that have to be measured as part of it. And so, you know, this bigger context of long-term recovery, I think, can be a big enough context to work in, to look at what are all the elements that we need to be thinking about, spending time on, making plans for, and dedicating funds to. So that's one thought. The other thought, and this is something that's just really keep coming back to, and that is, we're a small town, right? We have small staff. We don't have a community development office. We don't have a place where these bigger ideas and these bigger needs live. And so what happens is we have volunteers, which are wonderful and great and do good work. But, you know, to Laura's point too, folks burn out. And so if we have, you know, right now we've got 11 people on the East Village Committee. We've got, you know, 7 people on the grants group. We've got this illustrious body that is doing amazing work, and all these other committees that are happening in town. And my concern is that we're going to go through a process again of good work and good ideas, and there isn't going to be a place for it to live, or some place where it's owned, so that you know, if we said, okay, these are the top 3 priorities, who's going to make sure that those actually happen? And that those, even if they are volunteer committees, who's going to make sure that time, you know, as time goes by, that these are long-term projects? How do they find their way into reality? And we're not alone in this process. This is like all communities that have limited resources are going to have to struggle with this,
And they're all gonna lose the funding under the current state budget that is provided to municipalities that don't have those grant offices. That's today's news from the League of Cities and Towns.
yeah, so there we are, right? And so I think it's a bigger frame, you know, and I think, yes, housing, we can certainly do a lot with, but I think we have a much bigger issue, which is, how are we gonna revitalize after all this loss? How are we gonna bring things back and really forward? So I'm one voice, you know, whatever the board wants to do here.
Can I ask Karen a question?
Yeah, please.
Karen, so I just want to make sure that are you saying that you think we should go through this process of BCRD with a long-term recovery lens, which would also think about how we actually follow through with this? Not that you're saying that we
Yeah.
shouldn't go through the process, because all we would have is
No,
volunteers
I
on the
think
other
we
end.
should, but I think we need the longer lens, and I think, and within that lens, we need to build infrastructure into our government, you know, to be able to make sure that we can do it. You know, yeah, because it's big. These aren't gonna be small projects. You know, if you rehab a hotel, right, even if it's a volunteer group that takes it on, this is a big multi-year
Yeah,
project, right? So.
I think I'm hearing, oh, no.
I was just gonna
please.
read some comments from the
Please,
room.
thank you.
So, Christy Farnham asked, can it be recovery and revitalization, including housing? And Don Fancher says, not everyone agreed that we didn't need something broader. Our town has changed considerably last year.
Yeah. I mean, I want to affirm and second that, yeah, a holistic lens here on what are the needs of Plainfield right now, like wants to be held by someone. VCRD is in a good position to be holding that like high elevation view of town. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to revitalization, there's so much to recovery. Housing is essential. But there's also so much undergirding that. In terms of timing and pace, you know, I'm thinking, I don't know how many events like represent, for example, your 4-month commitment in, was it Johnson?
Yeah,
So, but you know, like early, middle, and late season is all feels appropriate. You know, it's like, I think what we're seeing, what I'm seeing is people coming out of their houses for the first time over winter. You know, this is a moment where we are kind of showing up to one another. There's lots of ideas around. There's lots of people still feeling unheard, and they're good ideas about these alternate solutions that aren't getting enough airtime, play, or exploration. And so providing an early outlet to like start syncing ideas, to like be focusing on, I guess, to be drawn focus toward the broad view of what are the many like avenues, strategies, pathways toward recovery and revitalization that then get built upon and built upon and built upon, and that we could track toward like a fall time of you know, laying in some bureaucratic infrastructure, some government infrastructure. I don't know if there's like space in the town office that can become like a base for like this work. But, you know, yeah, that's part of the holistic lens of how this town holds the work going forward and holds, and also channels the energy that is here right now. And if through this work, we get even a committed volunteer group, it doesn't have to be a formal committee, who is exploring any one of these many options, that's progress. I see a hand raised, Alicia Weiss.
One second. Okay, thank you. I'm gonna reveal my ignorance about the extent of what VCRD does. I was looking at your website. I know there's a section that says policy work, but does your organization coordinate with different towns in the legislature to advocate for particular initiatives, bills, and amendments that would affect housing?
thanks for that question. And yeah, it's an interesting arm of VCRD. So when we say policy, what we do is convene community voices around Vermont and pull themes from what we hear and present those themes. So we don't take advocacy stances as an organization and try to remain nonpartisan within the State House, but we do try to bring rural voices to the State House so that they can be heard and a part of the process, given the different communities that we are working in around the state. So we don't.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers your question. We don't.
Yeah, maybe not what I wanted to hear, but maybe I'm not understanding you as fully, or maybe you can act as a fulcrum for coordination between towns. There's been some discussion lately on Plainfield People, the Facebook group, about a number of houses that are neglected. Landlord doesn't want to sell them, possibly landlords, one of which just sort of fell in recently. And meanwhile, they're not available for housing. They are, you know, they're rotting on our soil, which isn't great for the town. They're not bringing in, you know, they're not bringing in people who are going to shop, who are going to pay taxes, etc. And I'm aware that there's a bill in the House that's just sitting in committee. I have no idea if there's will in the committee to bring it up, H109, that talks about developing ordinances that would require maintenance of neglected empty properties from landlords, or even, I suppose, if they were occupied. And the one thing I was a little disappointed by when I read the language is that bill as currently drafted only applies within the downtown designations, and a cluster of houses that, people have lived in, were nostalgically reminiscing about, that could be used, that have long history in our town, are right outside of the designated downtown. So I was wondering if other towns had issues like that. As I see it, I'm not sure we have any teeth to promote some kind of movement on these properties. If other towns had the will to pursue uh, a bill that was more expansive, I mean, is that something you could help with and support? This is just my voice. I don't know if the town's interested, but
Yeah, it's an
something.
interesting, I think, you're speaking to some of the conversations that would come up in a housing conversation in the town. The other thing that VCRD is able to support is connections with other towns that may have a housing committee or have come up against similar experiences in their communities and how they're working through it. So there's also that potential to link, out of the municipal boundaries of your town with efforts that are underway around the state that are similarly driven by small towns, have a lot of similar restrictions on capacity or staff to actually implement, but what are some of those creative ways that either housing committees or groups of people within a community that has identified housing as a key priority, how are they tackling some of those entities? So I think that's one opportunity that VCRD can bring to the table, of making some of those connections across other towns in Vermont. But yeah, again, we don't, we may be able to connect you to some of those other entities and create a platform for advocacy, but that's not what our organization takes on.
Okay, I
curious-
appreciate your response.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious, Laura, what are the next steps here? How do we, or is it like VCRD makes a proposal to town of Plainfield, or what comes next?
Well, if Plainfield wants VCRD to support a community conversation, we would welcome a letter requesting those services and laying out whether it is just a housing focused, more near term, or if it's something that you want to have a broader lens, more of a resilience vision or strategy for the community that includes a number of different topics, areas. And we would work, the first step really in the process would then be pulling, after the support of the municipality for that, then it becomes a community-led process where VCRD would pull in different voices and start to create that planning group that would help to formulate what the community conversation would look like. So when I say 2 community meetings, if it's a housing focus within a prioritization piece, there would be a step before that actually brings community members together to help plan the event and make it a part of what the fabric that already exists within Plainfield and entities and organizations that are working towards that. So it would be gathering those folks together and then setting dates moving forward for those broader community gatherings and community forums. So I guess needing clarity on if it's specific, just wanting a housing conversation and wanting it this summer, or a longer, more inclusive process that could happen in the fall, more of a multi-step process looking at revitalization or a long-term recovery
You're looking
plan.
for, from the select board of Plainfield, kind of a design, a vision for a season of events. If that's what it looks like, describe to y'all so that you can begin that work and know that we wish to enlist your support.
Yeah, but I don't think the select board needs to design the process. That would be, we would through our experiences in other communities, be able to provide like a menu of options of, here's how we pulled it together in Johnson for this long-term recovery process. These were the steps that were included. If it is just a housing forum, the question to the broader planning group, which I think extends beyond the select board, is what do you want to see out of it? Is it a list of project ideas, or is it also a prioritization of what those ideas are and starting to build action plans towards pursuing those other avenues? So I think there's what the outcome desire is for it, but not necessarily the design A to Z in the middle of it. VCRD with the planning group from the community would then put that in place based on what the desired outcome is.
And then by when would you like this note?
Well, I would say that the summer schedule is starting to get very full for commitments in other communities. So if we know in the next few weeks that Plainfield does want to hold a community conversation, we may be able to fit in one over the summer. I would say if you want more time to talk amongst yourselves, there would be space in the fall to have those conversations, and that schedule won't be built out for a month or so, and so could have a little more space if you want to see how things emerge. The May 5th grant conversation, as well as some of the other moving pieces within town, see how the village expansion group is moving forward. We would need to know to hold that space and time in the fall as soon as realistically possible from the group. And I know I had given you sort of that mid-April timeline for if Plainfield wants support from VCRD, we would just want to be able to continue to hold that space in our schedules to provide capacity.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Is there any other, Dan? Figgis?
So the letter just needs to say, like, we would like you to come into our town to hold a conversation around, this is just an example, long-term recovery with ensuring there's a focus on housing, and we'd like for that to happen in the fall of 2025. Like something like that. Like you don't need like a thesis. You just need like a pretty simple, as long as you kind of know what direction you're going in.
Yep. Yeah, sort of what topics and sort of what is the goal to have a sort of long-term recovery, revitalization conversation and plan for the town. Is it to hold community conversations? So I think there could be, especially if it's fall that you're looking towards, it can be somewhat adaptable once we get there as to like what's happening, the context that it exists within at that time. And then gathering those ideas, prioritizing, and starting to generate action steps forward.
Christy Farnham had a message, did she?
Christy Farnham's message was to seize the day.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. I can't figure out how to raise my hand on Zoom. I'm a Teams person. Yeah, this is Christy Farnham wearing my resident hat, but knowing the good work of VCRD because I work at the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and they have worked on many of our Northern Border Regional Commission projects, and actually a grantee that received funding to prioritize flood ravaged communities, Plainfield being one of them, and recognizing that Johnson too climbed out of a similar hole from the 2023 event. So I really encourage this collaboration with VCRD, and I also discourage a narrowed focus going in prioritizing one need when the needs of Plainfield, as Dawn referenced, are much greater and much broader than they were before this flood event. So, and I would discourage too waiting, because we know we're going to get some funding in. We know these projects are going to be moving forward. And if we're not ready to mobilize on what those priorities are, because we're waiting to, sit down as a group and make those decisions, it could be a real lost opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Christy.
I wanted to ask Christy, Are you suggesting that we try to get a slot for the summer? We get it that, do we get it that soon?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I guess I'm wondering transparently for this board, is there need for a motion to like submit a memorandum here?
Well, I think that's what.
No, I guess, do we need a motion now to like send this note? Is my intention to get you a note soon, Laura? BCRD, do we need to motion that now?
Well, I think we have to motion it at some point. They need to be invited in.
Yeah, I'm not ready to do that tonight. Without further discussion, and we have other items on the agenda, so.
Okay,
So we put it on the agenda for our next
I
meeting?
mean, I think it is on the agenda for next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we will have this week to perhaps create that memo. Okay, thank you very much, Laura, for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. If other questions come up, please reach out.
Will do. Moving on, discussing the unsecured loan documents arrival from the Vermont Community Foundation. This is for the $150,000 in toward phase 2 engineering services for the village expansion project. We thought there would be a more robust conversation about this tonight, potentially involving our legal counsel on the matter. The short message, maybe there will be more to say than this, but essentially, it's a draft document. It's yet to be reviewed by legal counsel. It is not yet in its final form. Meanwhile, there are a number of conditions that it explicitly states are required for us to move forward into this agreement. A bunch of which have not yet been achieved. So we're in kind of a holding pattern. We're going to try again to get our attorney here next week for executive session. We shall see. There may not be much more to say about this than that right now, but I will offer the board a chance to say more if desired.
I think we need all the information. Before we decide anything. Let's be really clear.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And I think we're also being careful to not say too much about it because it is a draft. Yeah, okay. Moving on. We have the approval of liquor licenses, or just one, I guess, no liquor licenses for BAS LLC. Varieties being first class, outside consumption, and third class. Carol at the town office advised us that she handles this through the online portal. She accomplishes this. She's like vetted this group. It's simply for us to kind of say yes to Carol's good work and approve it.
I believe this is the country club,
Yeah,
the golf course.
the golf course catering, yeah.
Is there a motion at the table to approve the liquor license for BAS?
So move.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, 4 votes for. Approval of BAS liquor licenses. Next agenda, approval of draft minutes from April 7th, 2025. I have a comment on these minutes that I guess I am wanting to involve the board to discuss. In the minutes as written, it details that Carl Bissix explains the process and the need for a 2/3 majority for the reconsideration vote to pass. That was how it was written in the minutes. That was not my understanding of what Carl said. And I looked at near as I could tell, the spot in the state law that talking about reconsideration votes that seems to say something different, but I have to admit that I don't actually know what it means. I struggle to interpret this. And so from the law, a majority vote in favor of reconsideration or rescission of a question voted on by paper or Australian ballot shall not be effective unless the number of votes cast in favor of reconsideration or rescission exceeds 2/3 of the number of votes cast for the prevailing side at the original meeting unless the voters of the municipality approve a different percentage, et cetera. I'm gonna like, Pam, this is someone who's a
So I
visual
think
learner.
I think what it's saying is that for reconsideration to happen, they need, so that, what was the vote? It was 100, I think it was 187 to something. At least two, they would need 2/3 of that 187. The yays,
The number of voters that would have to return to the polls would have to be 2/3 of 187.
no, the number of people voting for reconsideration would have to be 2/3 of the 187.
Would have to exceed the 2/3 of 187. Because that's.
It's
the-
setting up a
That's the
standard.
number of the
so that-
prevailing side.
If we already passed the zoning, so if we have an election on May 20th and only 10 people show up, anything they do is not valid.
No,
It has to be at least 2/3 of the, I believe the yays, based on what you just read, the yays from the last election. And that was I'm saying 187, the number might be slightly different than that. So it would be 2/3 of the yeses from,
is the minimum number of nays on the reconsideration vote.
of the, I believe the yays. No, well, the reconsideration vote is gonna be should we reconsider? So there'll be yeses as well. When you vote next time, I think
Yeah, we have to be careful on the wording.
not
of
sure how the
we
wording
have to
is,
be
so-
careful on the wording of the article,
Yeah.
because we don't want yes to mean no, because that
Yeah.
will confuse people even more.
So yeah, the no's, so yes, the no's on May 20th have to be at least 2/3 of the yeses from March 4th,
And also be the majority.
and also be the majority.
Okay, so.
It's just a bit broader, the reconsideration vote has a broader, like a bigger standard than just a regular majority vote.
So I guess coming back to the approval of the minutes, this Carl Bissick explained the process and the need for a 2/3 majority for the reconsideration vote to pass. Is that sufficient information here? Or do we need to clarify that to be more accurate?
I think it could use clarification.
Yeah, I guess what I don't know, and this is just from a minutes perspective, is what Carl actually said, like we'd have to look at the recording. Because
Yeah, I don't.
we can't use minutes to change the record of what, like, just to provide correct information. The minutes are supposed to be a retelling of what
This is
happened
what he
in the
did
meeting.
say, Yes.
Even if he gave incorrect information in the meeting,
I understood, Carl, what I thought was this did not sound like what Carl said.
yeah, did you look at the transcript version of?
I didn't.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only way
Okay,
we can, try to change. I just don't know how we would change it easily without taking it completely out of context of what Carl might have said unless we look at the transcript.
All right, the
Can
original
we-
vote was 165 yes to
165.
87 no.
So you need,
So what's 2/3 of 165?
110. So you need 110 votes at least. So, and we can try to look at and we can just not approve these minutes this week and approve them next week.
I think that we have to do, we have to not approve them.
And you could also just have tonight's record correct
Yeah.
the specifics around
Yeah.
that. In the context, in the minutes of this meeting,
I see. So approve the minutes. Approve the minutes
as written, because
As
that is
written.
what Carl said, but
Can you hand me
clarify it in tonight's meeting.
this
this is the
no, is this the
middle
thing,
of the page,
the actual thing with the,
what I read from the law.
right here?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
So if he quotes the law in tonight's minutes
Then that's,
verbatim,
okay,
no one
Yeah,
can argue with that.
that works for me. That works for me. Thank you all for your problem solving.
In some minutes.
So I motion that we approve the April 7th, 2025 minutes.
Second. Any discussion further? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 4, unanimous. Okay, we are on to the approval of warrants. Accounts payable, 331 to 411. And payroll, 4/3/25 and 4/10/25.
We added 410.
We added 410, Carol added 410.
Thoughts I did see. That's right, so that, yeah.
Is there a motion at the table?
So move.
Second? Second. All right, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Dan?
Yeah.
Four votes to approve the approval of warrants, unanimous. For tonight, announcing the date for the next select board meeting. The next date is a week from today, 4/21/25.
Is that a special or is that a regular?
That's a special.
Peter.
That's,
Well, it was a special, that we requested because of the timeline for this RFP that we talked about earlier.
yeah.
The RFP that you talked about earlier,
We're supposed to be
we
getting,
gave ourselves an extra week to consider that. That's why we're having a special.
by the end of this week, we should be receiving the proposals themselves so that we have the weekend at least
Right.
to look at them.
Right, like maybe tomorrow. you could- Possibly,
May it be so.
or 10 o'clock this morning originally.
Didn't happen.
All right, can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting at
Before we
7?
do-
Yeah, please.
Are we trying to get our attorney for next week?
We are,
Okay,
we are.
We just know that he's out of the office until Wednesday this
Yeah.
week, so we won't be able to even check in with him until Wednesday.
okay. I mean, one of the reasons is, the loan documents that we got. There are some conditions in there we need to discuss with him.
Right. We get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
All those discussion. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. At 7:57, we adjourn this meeting of the Plainfield Select Board, Monday, April 14th, 2025. Thank you
You did a
all.
great job.
Well done.
Thank you.
You did a great job.
Way to march us along.
So what were you saying about the IRS?